Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott, and today is day 53 on my countdown to retirement. So, before I start my update for today, I just want to give you guys a quick heads up. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is the results from my first week on Carnivore. This video isn't about trying to convince anyone to be on this particular diet program. It's simply the mechanism that I'm using to try and address some health concerns and to also lose some weight. So if that's not interesting to you, you can skip off right now because that's where the vast majority of what I'm going to talk about today is going to constitute. There will be some other things, but that's the primary discussion. Anyway, moving on. So last night before I went to bed, my wife asked me to color her hair so that I would be able to highlight it today. So I did. I also caught up on filing paperwork for our brokerage accounts, and I found that we had 3 statements that needed to be reprinted that had gotten wet, and they were unreadable. So I was planning on doing that, tomorrow, which is now today. So this morning, I did my first weekly weigh-in following the first week, full week on Carnivore. And I ended up, so I weighed 208.8 pounds on my scale. So that's down 4.6 pounds this week. When I started Carnivore on November 1st, I weighed 213.4 pounds on my scale. The official weight at the doctor's office, which was taken on October 29th of 2025, and obviously I was fully closed at that point in time, although I didn't have my shoes on, but otherwise it's, short shirt, whatever. I weighed 214 pounds, 12.8 ounces. So that was my starting situation. My end result, or my end goal, I should say, is to get down to 155 pounds. I haven't weighed that probably since, I don't know, probably somewhere around 1990, 1989, 1990, something like that. We'll see if I can get there. Anyway, as you guys know, I have type 2 diabetes, and at my most recent doctor's visit, I had an A1C of 8.9, and I had an EAG of 209 milligrams per deciliter. So that was the impedance for me going back on Carnivore, to quickly reduce my blood sugar and also to lower my triglycerides and increase my HDL cholesterol. So take what I'm about to say in the next section here with skepticism, because clearly I'm not a doctor. I'm not recommending this for anybody. This is what I believe and what I'm using for my health planning. So for me, the lab numbers that I care the most about when I see the doctor are my A1C, which is the average blood glucose over the last 90 to 120 days, triglycerides, which are fat in the blood, HDL, which is good cholesterol, and I want my triglycerides divided by my HDL to stay under 2 and preferably as close to 1 as possible, because for me, I believe that that's a better cardiac risk factor than monitoring and trying to control LDL cholesterol. So the other thing that I care about is lymphocytes. So I always ask for a CBC with differential and platelet counts when I have a blood test drawn. Lymphocytes are a blood marker for chronic lymphocyte leukemia, or CLL, which you might be seeing a lot of ads on lately about pharmaceutical treatments for that condition, but it's the most common leukemia in adults. And then reticulate count is the next thing I care about, which is a blood test that measures the number of immature red blood cells, which are called reticulates, that the bone marrow produces. And higher than normal levels of reticulates in the bone marrow often are there to compensate for a loss such as hemolytic anemia, which is premature destruction of red blood cells, and lower levels um, mean that you're not producing, the bone marrow is not producing enough new red blood cells. That could be untreated iron deficiency anemia. It could be aplastic anemia, a vitamin B12 or folate deficiency, chronic kidney disease, radiation therapy, or bone marrow failure. And the reason why I care about that, specifically about the last two items that I talked about, is my dad died from a form of blood cancer. So I'm super keen to keep track of those two items, and pretty much at least every 6 months, sometimes more than that, but at least every 6 months I get those numbers so I know where I am and whether things are progressing in a direction I don't want them to be. So then, after 1 week on carnivore, my blood glucose in the morning when I first woke up or whatever was 146 milligrams per deciliter. That's down 93 milligrams per deciliter, which is a lot. So my 7 day average blood glucose was 131 milligrams per deciliter. So I made really good progress in the first week, right? So 1 week does not a trend to make. So we will see, as I move forward, how things progress. But that's pretty much what happened my first week and the results. And then after my weigh-in, I made our standard eggs and bacon breakfast. Then I logged on and paid for the lab test that I just talked about because the bills arrived yesterday. And then I ran out to Sprouts because I needed to pick up organic cocoa aminos, which is what I use to marinate. And when I say marinate, it's really like a very thin coating on both sides of a steak. That doesn't really, I mean, it slightly penetrates, but really it's a great tool for grilling to add a little bit of flavor with extremely low to no, well, there's 8 carbs, I think, per tablespoon, but by the time you get it and flip it over and cook it off, whatever, it's virtually none. So I know that it doesn't spike my blood sugar at all. So I use that to add a little bit extra flavor to the meats that I'm going to be cooking on the grill. And then when I got back, I shut off the outside spigots, and then I opened each spigot, let any excess water drain out, wrapped them with a cloth towel, and then I covered them with an insulated spigot cover in advance of the cold snap that we're getting starting this evening. And then I checked both of our vehicles' tire pressure, and I topped those off because, again, when you have a cold snap, cold makes things contract, so the pressure in the tires drops. And I wanted to make sure that they were where they were supposed to be at normal temperature, so that if in fact it does drop, we don't end up having a low tire pressure situation. And then when I was done with both of those things, I sat down. Well, I asked my wife if she was ready for me to highlight her hair. She said yeah. So she sat down. I pulled the hair through the cap, which is my least favorite thing to do. Takes me almost like an hour to get it through and balanced and whatever. And then I put on the highlighting. Well, I mix up the highlighting paste, and then I put that on, and she sits there for 45 minutes and lets the highlighting do its thing. So I did that. So it's now highlighted. And then for dinner, I ended up making strip steaks for dinner on the grill. And then my wife had a side of green beans. And then before I go to bed tonight, I will open the vanity doors in each of our bathrooms so that the room temperature air can circulate under the vanity. I'll also do a extremely slow drip for each of the faucets just to make sure that we don't run into any issues with the pipes where we're gonna, like I said, it's just going to be getting to 32 tonight here. So I'm not too worried about tonight. But then tomorrow, it's only going to get up into the very low 30s for the high, and then it'll be into the 20s tomorrow afternoon and evening, and that I am concerned about for the pipes. So I just want to be prepared, and so that's what I'll be doing. Anyway, that's my update for today. If you have any questions or any comments, please leave them in the comment section down below or drop me an email at myretirementramblings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great evening, and until tomorrow, take care.